What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB. Today, we're going to be talking about 3 must-start and 3 must-sit running backs here in Week 13 of the fantasy football season. So without wasting any more time, let's hop right into this video and let's talk about the guys that I like first. Now, the first player that I think you guys should be starting in your fantasy football leagues this week is going to be Rachaad White, running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he gets to play at home against the Carolina Panthers in this matchup. Currently have him as a top 10 play in my rankings this week, and that means that I'm viewing Rachaad as a mid-range running back 1 in my fantasy football lineups. This matchup against the Carolina Panthers is a great matchup for Rachaad. The Carolina Panthers are currently ranked 30th overall against the fantasy football running back position, giving up a total of 26 fantasy points per game to that positional group. And we now have 6 weeks in a row where Rachaad White has been a top 20 fantasy football running back, and 4 of those weeks he has been a top 12 running back, so it has been a great stretch for Rachaad White on your fantasy football teams. And really the reason behind that is because Rachaad White is seeing a very healthy receiving load. He is also seeing a very healthy rushing load, so the workload for Rachaad White has been great, and I think he is a plug-and-play RB1 this week in your fantasy football lineups. Now, the second player that you guys should be starting is going to be Zack Moss, running back for the Indianapolis Colts, and he plays on the road at the Tennessee Titans. Currently have him as a top 15 running back in my rankings this week, and that's going to make him a high-end running back too for your fantasy football leagues. Now, this matchup for Zack Moss is going to be pretty middle of the pack. The Tennessee Titans are currently ranked 15th against the fantasy football running back position, and they are allowing about 17.5 fantasy points per game to that position group. And the reason why we're starting Zack Moss is obviously because Jonathan Taylor is now hurt. The last time that Jonathan Taylor was hurt, Zack Moss had 4 top 10 finishes for fantasy football in his absence. And I think depending on the information that we get about Jonathan Taylor, they're saying right now it could be 2 to 3 weeks. I've heard 3 to 5. There are a bunch of different variables in consideration, but Zack Moss could definitely be a league winner for you guys down the stretch. And now the third running back that you guys should be starting in your fantasy football leagues is going to be Javonte Williams, running back for the Denver Broncos, and he plays on the road at the Houston Texans. I have him as a top 20 play at the running back position, and that's going to make him a mid-range running back too for your fantasy football leagues. Now, this matchup for Javonte Williams is also going to be a middle of the pack matchup. The Houston Texans currently are 17th against the running back position, giving up 18.7 fantasy points per game to that positional group. And what I really like about Javonte Williams is that since week 8, Javonte Williams is averaging 23 opportunities per game. That is rushing attempts and receiving targets in that span. And so he is seeing a very heavy workload in both of those departments. And this matchup against the Houston Texans has one of the highest game totals of the weekend. It is projected at 47.5 total points. But now that we've talked about some of the guys that I like, let's talk about some of the guys that I don't like. And we're going to be starting with James Conner, running back for the Arizona Cardinals, and he gets to play on the road against the Pittsburgh Steelers, so a little bit of a revenge game for James Conner if you're into that. I currently have him outside of my top 24 running backs on the week, and that's going to make him a high-end running back 3 for your fantasy football rosters. Now, this matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers, they are currently ranked 18th against the running back position. They're allowing about 19.4 fantasy football points per game to that positional group, so not a super tough matchup for James Conner. However, James Conner hasn't finished in the top 24 running backs since week 3 of the fantasy football season. Obviously, he missed a couple weeks in there due to injury, but it hasn't been a very good couple of months for James Conner if you've had him on your fantasy football teams. And I think this week, as I've said in previous weeks, James Conner is going to be a touchdown dependent option, and without a touchdown, he's not really going to be startable on your fantasy football teams. Now, the second player that I'm going to be avoiding in my lineups this week is going to be Joe Mixon, running back for the Cincinnati Bengals. He plays on the road at the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I also have Mixon outside of my top 24 running backs on the week. Just like Conner, I think you should view him as a high-end running back 3, and the Jacksonville Jaguars are the 11th hardest matchup against the running back position so far this year, and they're giving up 16.5 fantasy points per game to the position. Now, last week with Jake Browning under center for the Cincinnati Bengals, obviously no Joe Burrow, he's out for the remainder of the year. Joe Mixon had 8 rushing attempts for 16 rushing yards, and it really did not look good for the Cincinnati Bengals offense. I think as long as Browning is under center, this offense is going to be very, very putrid, and it is going to be very hard for Joe Mixon to be fantasy relevant and give you those top 12, top 20 numbers that we're kind of used to getting from Joe Mixon, unless for some reason he's able to fall into the end zone. And now the third and final player that I think you should consider sitting in your fantasy football leagues this week is going to be Jerome Ford, running back for the Cleveland Browns, and he plays on the road against the Los Angeles Rams. I currently have him outside of my top 24 running backs as well, and again, he is going to be a high-end running back 3 for your fantasy football leagues this week. This Rams matchup is going to be a little bit of a tougher matchup for Jerome Ford. They are currently ranked ranked 8th against the running back position, and they're only allowing about 15.5 fantasy points per game to that positional group. And kind of a funny stat, Jerome Ford has been Mr. Consistent over the last 3 weeks. He's finished with 11.9 PPR points each of the last 3 weeks, but in that span and even the game before that, it has been a continual downtrend for his rushing attempts. We've seen him go from 20 rushing attempts just 4 weeks ago to 17 to 12, and then last week he had 9 rushing attempts. So it seems like the Browns are slowly using him a little bit less. I don't know if 9 rushing attempts is going to be the norm, but it does seem like they're relying a little bit less on Jerome Ford these days. Now that is all I have for you guys today. If you did enjoy the video, go ahead and hit that like button. It is the best free way to show our channel some support, and it does help us out in the YouTube algorithm. It also lets me know that you guys like this type of content, so I'll keep it coming. Additionally, if you like this video, you want to see more videos like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Also, make sure you're hitting that notification bell. That way you never miss a new video when it does come out. And last but not least, make sure you are a member of our Discord. We have a free Discord community. It is going to be linked in the YouTube description. And we have a dope community there. We do giveaways sometimes. We also talk fantasy football 24/7, 365. So if you want to join a dope free community, make sure you go to the link in the description and join that Discord community. And with all that being said, I will see you guys on the next video. But until then, peace out.